I watched her laugh across a candlelit table, the same laugh she used to share with me. Tonight, I didn't choose the spotlight. I chose the shadows. And from there, I saw everything. Everything she thought I'd never notice. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, because you won't believe how this story ends. I walked into the restaurant, and for a moment, everything seemed ordinary. Soft light bounced off the polished wooden tables. The faint clinking of glasses mingled with the low hum of distant laughter, and the scent of roses and wine floated in the air. On the surface, it was beautiful, the kind of place people came to celebrate love, not betray it. But I knew better. I had to know better. From the shadows near the entrance, I watched her. Celira, she looked radiant tonight, more than I had ever remembered her. The way the candlelight kissed her cheekbones, how her hair caught the glow like liquid amber. It made my chest tighten, the kind of ache that comes when your heart knows it's about to break. She wasn't alone, and the man with her Orion caver was everything I hated in a rival. Charming, confident, with that sly, knowing smile that made him seem untouchable. My stomach twisted and my hands clenched instinctively, but I forced myself to breathe. I had to watch. I had to see everything. They laughed at something Orion said, and Celira's hand brushed his. That brush, casual to anyone else, was a dagger to me. My mind raced through memories, quiet dinners we had shared, moments where her hand had rested on mine in exactly the same way, smiles we had exchanged that now seemed like lies. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a theater of betrayal, performed right under my nose in a place that celebrated romance. I wanted to scream, to throw the nearest glass, to tear down the world around me, but I stayed. I stayed in the shadows, gripping the edge of the table, letting the anger mix with heartbreak, letting every detail etch itself into my memory. I noticed the little things, the way she leaned in when he spoke, the way her laughter was softer when it hit his ears, the way she hadn't noticed me yet. And I realized how deep this went, how she had chosen to forget everything we had, choosing him instead. There was pain, yes, but beneath it, a cold, calculated anger was building inside me. Karma wasn't gone, it was just waiting. Patience would be my weapon, shadows my ally. I sipped my water, keeping my face calm, letting the scene unfold like a slow, excruciating film. Every laugh, every glance, every sip of wine they shared, it was fuel. And even as the first pangs of despair hit me, a strange clarity took over. This wasn't just about watching. This was about witnessing the inevitable. She thought she was free from consequences, untouchable in her moment of thrill. But I knew the story wasn't finished yet, and I would be the one holding the pen when it was over. I leaned back slightly, breathing deliberately, letting the quiet hum of the restaurant mask the storm inside me. Tonight, I wasn't the man she remembered. I wasn't the husband laughing along her side, or the one she confided in. I was a shadow, unseen but fully aware. And in this darkness, I realized something powerful. Patience wasn't weakness. Patience was everything. The more I watched, the more obvious it became. At first, I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just friendly gestures, harmless laughter, but my gut refused the lie. Every subtle glance they shared, every brush of her hand against his arm spoke louder than words ever could. I could feel my heart sinking, and with each passing second, the sting of betrayal cut deeper. I wanted to look away, to escape, but I couldn't. I had to see the truth, raw and unfiltered. Celira laughed at something Orion whispered, and the way her eyes softened when they met his. That was the moment I felt something inside me snap. Not rage, not sorrow, but a sharp, twisting mix of both that left me cold in the chest. Memories collided with reality, the candlelit dinners we had shared, the promises whispered in the dark, the comfort of her hand in mine, all replaced by this harsh new truth. She had chosen him over me. She had chosen betrayal over love. I remembered the mornings when her smile was for me, the late-night talks where we had planned our lives together, and now it felt like I was watching a stranger where her face. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't let them see my fury. If they saw the storm in my eyes, they would know. and I wasn't ready to give them that satisfaction. Oh, I would stay in the shadows, let them think they were untouchable. Her hand rested on his arm, her fingers, lingering just long enough to make it impossible to ignore. I could almost hear my own heartbeat in my ears, loud and relentless. The warmth I once associated with her touch had turned into a weapon pointed straight at me. In every laugh she offered him was a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to cry, to yell, to demand answers, but I remained still, letting the scene unfold like a cruel play. And then came the whispers. I caught fragments of their conversation, words like escape, perfect, and finally free, drifting across the candlelight like poison. They didn't know I could hear them. They didn't know I was. Here, observing every betrayal, committing it to memory for the day it would matter most. My hands twitched at my sides, my mind racing with the inevitability of what was to come. Karma was patient, and I would make sure she understood its weight. I felt a strange clarity amid the storm of hurt. Anger, heartbreak, and disbelief all collided, leaving a burning resolve in their place. I didn't need to confront her tonight. I didn't need to demand answers or force apologies. Just needed to watch and to remember. Every glance, every touch, every stolen smile, it was proof. Proof of betrayal, yes, but also proof that the moment of reckoning would be mine to deliver. As I leaned back slightly, letting the shadows cloak me, I realized that this was no longer just about heartbreak. This was about justice, patience, and the perfect timing of karma. She had chosen him, and in doing so, she had set the stage for her own undoing. And I would be there, waiting, silent but fully aware, when the truth came crashing down. I sat there, watching them, but my mind was a battlefield. Part of me screamed to storm across the room, to grab her arm, demand explanations, and force the truth from her lips. Another part whispered that doing so would ruin everything, that patience, shadows, and silence would speak louder than confrontation ever could. The conflict twisted inside me, a storm I couldn't escape. Every laugh she offered him felt like fire against my skin, and yet every fiber of me remained rooted in my seat, hidden from view. I kept replaying memories, desperate to make sense of the chaos. How had it come to this? How had the woman I loved, the one whose hand I had once held through sleepless nights and quiet mornings, become someone unrecognizable? I remembered the warmth of her smile when it was meant for me, the gentle brush of her fingers across my palm, the quiet words of always whispered in the dark. And now, all of it felt like a lie, beautiful, carefully staged lie. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, sharp and hot, but it wasn't reckless. I felt the cold logic of revenge beginning to take shape, intertwining with the heartbreak. Every gesture, every glance between them, every whisper I caught became fuel for the plan I hadn't yet fully formed. I didn't need to act now. Acting too soon would ruin the impact. Timing, I realized, would be everything. Karma would be precise, deliberate, and undeniable. I would be the one delivering it. I tried to breathe, tried to focus on something. Anything other than the dagger of betrayal twisting in my chest, but the restaurant around me seemed to close in. The soft music became a cruel accompaniment, highlighting every smile they shared, every stolen laugh. My hands twitched with frustration. My jaw ached from clenching it too tightly. I felt trapped between rage and sorrow, between the desire to act and the wisdom to wait. Yet in that turmoil, clarity emerged. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't a victim. I was a witness, an observer, and eventually I would be the force that turned the tables. The shadows that concealed me now would soon conceal the weight of truth I intended to deliver. I let the moments stretch, letting anger sharpen into patience, heartbreak harden into resolve. The contrast was intoxicating, the quiet simmering control versus the chaos they believed they had unleashed. And amid the storm inside me, a strange satisfaction began to grow. I realized that my emotions, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the simmering rage, were all pieces of a larger design. Patience wasn't weakness. It was preparation. Pain wasn't punishment. It was clarity. And betrayal wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a reckoning. I leaned back slightly, letting the shadows of the corner hold me, feeling the tension coil and tighten like a spring. They laughed, oblivious to my presence, oblivious to the storm they had stirred. And in that moment, I knew very clearly that when the time came, the scales would balance. And I would be the one holding the weight of karma in my hands. I knew the moment had come. The tension inside me, that simmering storm of betrayal and heartbreak, had reached its tipping point. But I didn't rush. I had learned that revenge wasn't about immediate gratification. It was about precision, about patience, about letting the other person believe they were untouchable until the very last second. Every laugh, every whispered word between Celira and Orion became my guide, my map of how deep their betrayal truly ran. I started quietly observing every detail with surgical attention. Their hands, the way her eyes lingered on him longer than necessary, the casual touches that were meant to feel invisible. I memorized them all. I didn't confront them, didn't make a scene. I stayed in the shadows, letting the restaurant's ambient glow mask the storm brewing inside me. I was calm, but my mind was sharp, focused, meticulously recording every transgression, every flicker of intimacy. A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of my lips. I realized something essential. The first step of revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was observation. Gathering proof, collecting moments, letting them continue thinking they were safe while I prepared the moment when consequences would strike. I could feel the power in that knowledge, a quiet satisfaction that grew with each stolen glance I recorded mentally. And then I acted subtly. I positioned myself near the edge of their awareness, letting my presence be felt without being seen. I ordered a drink, casually choosing a table that gave me a full view without drawing attention. Every gesture I made was deliberate, a shadow in the room, an invisible observer who knew everything. My heart still ached, but that ache had transformed into something sharper, more controlled. It was the ache of anticipation, the thrill of inevitability. I caught a whispered conversation between them, Orion speaking in tones meant to be private, Celira laughing in a way that stung. Finally, I thought, they think they're untouchable. They have no idea the storm is coming. I imagined the look on their faces when they realized that every secret, every lie, had been quietly recorded in my mind. That every intimate gesture they shared was a thread in the web I would unravel. The first act of revenge was subtle. It's almost imperceptible, a gentle reminder of my awareness, a cold, invisible nudge that I was not powerless. I let Orion think he had my sympathy, Celira think she could continue as if nothing had changed. And yet, beneath it all, the gears of karma were turning. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was preparing, shaping the inevitable consequences with the patience of a surgeon. By the time their dessert arrived, I felt a strange satisfaction. The shadows had given me the perfect vantage point, and the knowledge of their betrayal had given me a sense of control I hadn't felt in weeks. The storm inside me had not yet broken, but it was ready. And when the moment came to strike, it would not be loud. It would not be messy. It would be precise, deliberate, and unforgettable. Karma, patient and exacting, would have its day, and I would be the one holding the scale. When they finally stood up from their table, I felt my pulse quicken. It was as if every emotion from the night, heartbreak, anger, betrayal, and cold patience, all collided into one single moment. This was it, the moment where silence would end and truth would cut through everything they thought they had hidden. As they walked toward the exit, still wrapped in the illusion of their secret world, I rose from my seat slowly, letting the shadows fall away from me for the first time tonight. Celira turned first. For a second, she didn't recognize me, or perhaps she refused to. Her smile faded instantly, replaced by a slow, dawning horror that spread across her face like a stain. Orion froze beside her, his confidence collapsing under the sudden weight of exposure. I didn't say a single word at first. I just looked at them, her trembling, him stiffening, and let the silence speak the truth louder than my voice ever could. Then it broke. "What are you doing here?" Celira asked, her voice cracking, a mix of guilt and panic. She reached for words the way someone reaches for a lifeline, desperate, frantic, unstable. But the moment her hand brushed Orion's arm, I felt something inside me snap in a controlled, icy way. "I should be asking you that," I said. My voice was calm to calm, and I saw her flinch, as if the calmness itself was a slap. Orion tried to speak next, to insert himself into a story he didn't belong in. "Kaylin, listen." I stepped forward, and he stepped back. Good. Even he could feel the storm radiating off me. "No," I said, cutting him off. "You don't get to speak." Celira's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or fear. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. My heart had been too generous for too long. "You lied to me," I said, and the words were heavier than anything I'd spoken that night. "You sat here tonight with him, laughing, touching, whispering, while I watched every second of it." She tried to defend herself, but the words she reached for collapsed before they reached her lips. She looked small, cornered by her own choices. When I exposed the fragments of their conversation I'd overheard, her knees almost buckled. Orion's eyes widened, and he tried to step forward, tried to shield himself behind excuses. But I wasn't having it. I let my voice rise, not in a scream, but in a sharp, controlled strike of anger. She reached out to touch me, to calm me, to validate herself, but I stepped back. Her hand fell uselessly between us. I felt the anger reach its climax, sharp, explosive, undeniable. And then came the moment that snapped the last thread. Celira raised her voice at me, desperate, defensive, trying to twist the story. And that's when I delivered the truth with the force it deserved. "You didn't just betray me," I said. "You betrayed yourself. And now you get to live with the consequences." She stepped closer, and in her panic, she reached for me again. But my refusal hit her harder than a slap. The truth had landed. The guilt had landed. The storm had landed. I walked past them, leaving them frozen in the wreckage of their choices. Behind me, I heard her gasp, the sound of a person realizing they were no longer in control of the story. And for the first time all night, I felt free. I stepped out of the restaurant into the cool night. And for the first time all evening, the weight pressing on my chest began to lift. The chaos I had felt inside me, the heartbreak, the rage, the cold, simmering anger finally settled into something sharp, precise, and undeniably satisfying. The storm had passed, and in its place, a quiet clarity reigned. I hadn't needed to scream, hadn't needed to throw plates or yell until my voice broke. Karma had done its work, and I'd been patient enough to let it unfold naturally. Behind me, I could still feel the echoes of Celira's panic, the collapse of Orion's smug confidence. They had believed they were untouchable, that tonight's stolen moments would never come back to haunt them. But reality has a way of catching up. They were left to face each other, to people who had built their thrill on lies, and I knew that the satisfaction they thought they were stealing from life would turn inward, devouring them quietly, slowly, and entirely. That's the thing about betrayal. It always finds a way to return to the betrayer, sometimes in ways they never see coming. I walked down the street, the lights of the city flickering across the pavement like fragments of memory, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit until now. The pain, the anger, the heartbreak, they had been my teachers. Every glance they shared, every laugh, every touch that should have been mine, it had sharpened me, hardened me, made me more aware, more deliberate. I wasn't just walking away from betrayal. I was walking into freedom. A part of me wanted to linger, to watch the aftermath, to see them crumble under the weight of their own choices. But I didn't. That was the difference between me and them. I didn't need to humiliate them, didn't need to exact public revenge. The shadows I had embraced that night had shown me the power of patience, and I let the world turn without my interference. Karma doesn't need my hands to strike. It only needs time. And then, finally, a smile crossed my lips. Not one of gloating, not one of cruelty, but a quiet, resolute satisfaction. I had survived their betrayal, witnessed their truth, and emerged stronger. They had chosen pleasure over loyalty, deceit over honesty, and I had chosen silence, patience, and clarity. The balance had been restored in ways they could never understand. I paused at a street corner, feeling the night air against my face, crisp and clean, as if the universe itself had exhaled with me. In that moment, I let go of every fragment of hurt, every lingering sting of rage. I had the last word without ever speaking it aloud. I had witnessed, endured, and survived, and in doing so, I had claimed my own peace. I walked on, the shadows behind me fading, but the memory of their choices burning brightly in my mind. Tonight had ended, but the lesson remained. Betrayal has a price, and karma always finds a way. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that I had walked out stronger, wiser, and unbroken.